Drifting for hundreds and sometimes thousands of miles, a tiny piece of parchment corked in a glass bottle finally meets the sand. When it is found, its location, time, and drift is studied to fascinating detail. In movies and media, messages in bottles are romanticized and seen as a viable method of communication. But truly, how many bottles sent to sea are ever recovered? Welcome to Fast Facts Friday. My name is Eleanor. Just a quick disclaimer for our younger audience before we dive in. This story may be disturbing to some, so viewer discretion is advised. Okay everyone, let's get into it. Bottled messages may date back to as early as 310 BC in water current studies reputed to have been carried out by Greek philosopher Theophrastus. The Japanese medieval epic The Tale of Heike records the story of an exiled poet who launched wooden planks on which he had inscribed poems describing his plight in about 1177 AD. In the 16th century, Queen Elizabeth I reputedly created an official position of uncorker of ocean bottles and decreed that anyone else opening the bottles could face the death penalty, since she was worried some bottles might contain secrets from British spies or fleets. In the 19th century, literary works such as Edgar Allan Poe's 1833 MS Found in a Bottle and Charles Dickens' 1860 A Message from the Sea inspired an enduring popular passion for sending bottled messages. Scientific experiments involving drift objects provide information about currents and help researchers develop ocean circulation maps. For example, experiments conducted in the mid-1700s by Benjamin Franklin and others indicated the existence and approximate location of the Gulf Stream, with scientific confirmation following in the mid-1800s. Using a network of beachcomber informants, Rear Admiral Alexander Bechter is believed to be the first from 1808 to 1852 to study travel of bottled messages around an ocean gyre, which is a large circulating current system. In the late 1800s, Albert I, Prince of Monaco, determined that the Gulf Stream branched into the North Atlantic Drift and the Azores Current. In the 1890s, Scottish scientist T. Wemyss Fulton released floating bottles and wooden slips to chart North Sea surface currents for the first time. Releasing bottles designed to remain a short distance above the seabed, British marine biologist George Parker Bidder III proved in the early 20th century that deep-sea currents flowed from east to west in the North Sea and that bottom feeders preferred to move against the current. The United States Coast and Geodeck Survey used drift bottles from 1846 to 1966. More recent technologies involving satellite tags, fixed current profilers, and satellite communication have permitted more efficient analysis of ocean currents. At any given time, thousands of modern drifters transmit current position, temperature, velocity, etc. to satellites, thus avoiding conventional drift bottles' dependence on serendipitous finds and cooperation by conscientious citizens. Drift bottle studies have provided a simple way to learn about non-tidal movement of waters containing eggs and larvae of commercially important fishes for sharing among fisheries scientists and oceanographers. Such experiments simulate the travel of pollutants such as oil spills, study formation of ocean gyre garbage patches such as the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, and suggest travel paths of invasive species. Persistent currents are detected to allow ships to ride favorable currents and avoid opposing currents. Projected travel paths of navigation hazards such as naval mines advise safer shipping routes. Even in inland waterways, drifters wirelessly deliver real-time data on water quality, GPS location, and water velocity for early warning against flash floods, measuring pollution runoff, and monitoring algal blooms. Outside of science, people have launched bottled messages to find pen pals, bottle preachers have sent sermon bottles, propaganda-bearing bottles have been directed at foreign shores, and survivors have sent poetic loving tributes to departed loved ones or sent their cremated remains on a final journey. In 2009, it was estimated that since the mid-1900s, 6 million bottled messages had been released, including 500,000 from oceanographers. Bottled messages have played a surprising role in scientific discoveries. And we'll get into the timing of these finds next. If you're enjoying this episode and want to hear more about ships, their careers, and their wrecks, check out our main show, Shipwreck Sunday, every Sunday night at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Okay, let's look at how long some bottles drift at sea for. To start with, a very low percentage of messages in bottles are recovered, estimated to be lower than 3%, so they are released in large numbers, sometimes in the thousands. Reported recovery rates for large-scale scientific studies vary based upon the ocean of release, and range from 10 to 11% on the Atlantic according to Woods Hole, and 3.4% on the Pacific according to Scripps Institution. Oceanographic drift card recovery rates have ranged from 50% if released in densely populated areas like the North Sea and Puget Sound, to 1% in uninhabited areas like Antarctica. Recovery rates decrease as bottles released more than 100 miles from shore have rates below 10%, and, quote, only a few percent of those released more than 1,000 miles from shore are recovered. About 90% of marine debris washes up on less than 10% of the world's coastlines, favoring beaches perpendicular to the dominant ocean current. Objects with similar buoyancy characteristics tend to collect together. A Scripps scientist has also said that marine organisms can grow on the bottles, causing them to sink within 8 to 10 months unless washed ashore earlier. An unknown number are found but not reported. Some drift bottles were not found for more than a century after being launched. Floating objects may ride gyres that are present in each ocean and may be transferred from one ocean's gyre to another's. Further, objects may be sidetracked by wind, storms, countercurrents, and ocean current variation. Accordingly, drift bottles have traveled large distances, with drifts of 4,000 to 6,000 miles and more, sometimes traveling 100 miles per day, and this is not uncommon. Bottles have traveled from the Beaufort Sea above northern Alaska and northwestern Canada to northern Europe, from Antarctica to Tasmania, from Mexico to the Philippines, from Canada's Labrador Sea and Baffin Bay to Irish, French, Scottish, and Norwegian beaches, from the Galapagos Islands to Australia, and from New Zealand to Spain. Based on empirical data collected since 1901, a computer program called OSCARS, meaning Ocean Surface Current Simulator, digitally simulates motion and timing of floating objects in and between ocean gyres. Despite being launched substantial time periods before being found, some bottles have been found physically close to their original launch points, such as a message launched by two girls in 1915 and found in 2012 near Harson's Island, Michigan in the US, and a 10-year-old girl's message launched into the Indian River Bay in Delaware in 1971 and found in adjacent Delaware Seashore State Park in 2016. When we look at how this applies to ships and shipwrecks, there have been messages in bottles recovered claiming to be from missing or shipwrecked ships. For example, in 1856 on the Hebrides coast in Scotland, a message in a bottle was found claiming that a ship, believed to be SS Pacific, had sunk after a collision with an iceberg. After the disappearance of the White Star liner SS Neuronic, 4 bottles with messages inside were recovered later that claimed to have been written while Neuronic was sinking. In this week's episode of Shipwreck Sunday, we'll look at the bottled message recovered from stewardess Alice Bettridge regarding the loss of SS Kamloops, which at that point was simply missing, and her message explained she wanted her parents to know her fate. We'll get further into that this Sunday when we get into the story of SS Kamloops.